Hi everybody. Before I start, I want to start with a disclaimer. Because I'm not a researcher, and after being in this room today and listening to these great presentations by very intellectual cooks that have prepared these very great meals that are very nourishing, it's time for the dessert by somebody who's more, if you make a comparison, more familiar with a microwave than an actual stove. So I can only apologize. My presentation will not be highly intellectual like the other ones, but I'm very, very impressed with what I've been seeing today. What I wanted to talk to you about is based on the presentation, based on the project Our Media Cities and other projects that we are doing at the Film Archive in Brussels. I wanted to talk to you all as researchers or potential researchers or future researchers or just interested in research in general about how digital tools and new digital developments can actually help you and how we need your help. I loved the call, I think it just left the room, where somebody said we need to involve digital developers together with researchers right from the start from projects, and I agree with that wholeheartedly coming from a digital side, because if you let us, as digital developers and people that think about this, if you let us go, we'll come up with great things that are completely not useful for you. So we need your input to know what you would need, and otherwise, I mean, I can create stuff day in, day out that nobody was going to use. That's not going to be the idea, of course. Let's see if I can. Things might go wrong, but hey, it's life, you know. First of all, Cinematheque. What the hell is Cinematheque? You can see a picture of our screening rooms, the entrance to our screening rooms in the center of Brussels here. Cinematheque is the only royal film archive in Europe and in the world. That doesn't help us at all with money or influence, but we got that because we're one of the oldest ones. And in Belgium, when you exist 75 years, they give you a royal decree. And we exist 80 years this year, so we're one of the oldest archives in Europe. And we've 5 years ago they gave us, and now we're a royal film archive, whatever that might mean. Not a lot, especially not in Belgium these days. We're one of the oldest and biggest film archives in Europe, as I said, founded in '38. We have copies or negatives of about 80,000 titles. We have about 160,000 copies, so more copies of several copies of certain titles that we have. We have about 60,000 non-film collections, so books on films. I didn't include press articles because, I mean, and we have 700,000 photographs. These can be either stills from pictures or photographs from actresses, headshots, stuff like that. We're specialized in some strange things, but this is normal. This is Belgium. This is surrealism. We are, of course, specialized in Belgian film, which we should be. And the first moving images we have on is from 1895. From the brothers Lumière, who then wanted to sell their camera and went around Europe and just filmed, put their camera somewhere and filmed whatever, and they gave them to all the archives in Europe. And then we are specialized in experimental and avant-garde films, because we have a famous festival in that regards. Asian cinema, which is quite new, based on our new director, and Russian films from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And this is a specific thing because we had, starting from the 70s, our then director set up an underground sort of railroad for Russian films to protect them and to safeguard them, but also more, if we're being honest, to get Hollywood films into Russia, which was not allowed at that time, and they wanted to see these blockbusters, so they needed to create this underground railroad for these films. Which means that we now have one of the largest Russian film collections outside of Moscow, which is sometimes quite strange, but we have them. See, money can get you anything. But that also, and this leads me to a lot of things, we have a lot of history, but we did not have any real digital innovation since the mid-90s. And just as a reminder, this is what Amazon looked like in 1995. We did not evolve since 1995. Amazon obviously did. So we had quite a considerable problem. And until we got a new director, which is the guy here on the right, pretending to actually study a specific film and trying very hard but failing. Nonetheless, he was a great guy, an Italian who created Cinema e Trovato Festival in Bologna, and also was one of the founders of the Venice Film Festival. So he's very renowned. He's very loud as well. He's Italian, but he's very and he has a great vision. Always had it. And he became director in 2012. And he said, I need to start doing something about this failing on a digital level, because otherwise we're going to really have a huge problems. And he started mapping out the foundations for our future. The first was that he put in new interactive museum elements, which is just smaller things that would help visitors to the museum and the screening rooms. He created a new restoration lab, which was necessary to restore these films from Belgium, and he went into what we're now calling the rapid digitization program, which means we need to rapidly and quickly create digital copies of valuable cultural heritage films. So we had to go from this, and I hope this works now, which is, these are our depot. We have 4 floors of this, which is just analog film preserved in a very specific way, because it has to be freezing cold if you enter there. And we had to go to this. Now, people like me love this. People like historians probably don't really love that. You think like, oh yeah, give me the real cans with the real films, the analog films. Completely understand that, but those have an expiration date and we need to digitize them. Not only do we need to digitize them to preserve them, but we also need to digitize them and to give them, what I call, give them back to the community, because they're the property of the Belgian people and it's their heritage. No matter what the IPR rules say, in my opinion, it will always be the property of people in Belgium. So that's what we did, and then when we ended up with a whole lot of digital copies and digitized films, and no way, and they were stored on these hard drives and just throughout our depot. But we did not have any way for the public to actually view them. So this was the next thing, and he realized we needed to first do that. We need to get to a new metadatabase. And this is where it finally will become more clear and interesting for you guys as researchers, because this is also where my part in the story starts. Because I was involved with other metadatabases, and he found us. He asked me to create this metadatabase together with a small team, with 3 of us, and the oldest one, which has its benefits, and often it does not. But we started thinking about how can we do this, and we went for linked open metadata. And just bear with me for 1 second, because I'll try to, because every time I try to explain this to family or friends, they just zoom out in 2 seconds. I can see their eyes gloss over and nobody understands what I'm actually doing. So just normally say I do digital stuff. But as I said, like since the mid-90s, we had no real involvement. So we bought some software in 95, 94, I think, called Fox Pro, which is it doesn't exist anymore, which is a huge problem if you have a database based on it. And we have been using the same software for our database since 1997. So we needed an overhaul. However, the new assignment was really difficult, and it was more difficult as was expected, because we had to consider golden rules. We're a smaller institution. There's about 30 people working there. In general, that do for the many things that we do. We don't have a lot of funding, and the funding that we did have went to either the digitization or buying the new restoration lab. So it was certainly not going to go to the meta database. And we have a problem that we always dream big. So how could we find solutions that could, find a solution for all these things? And the solution in the end was quite simple, which was linked data. Now, we went from this, which is a relational database, which is something that you all know, which is basically you type in who the director is of a certain film in a specific field, and it's mostly based on free text, or you can create some vocabularies where you can choose the solution. And we went to what is a graph-linked database, which is completely different. Now, I'm going to very shortly try to explain what linked data does with regards to another metadatabase. Linked data is modeled in triples, as in 1, 2, triple, and it always has a subject, predicate, and an object. So, like for instance, Die Hard is a film. Die Hard has a director, which is John McTiernan. Die Hard has a genre, which is an action film. It has several genres, but just for this presentation, I took one of them. And each of these is expressed in a URI. URI, you'll recognize, which is the thing up top in your address when you go to any website in your browser. You will see these kind of things. So they're not expressed in text; they're actually expressed in URIs or URLs. And lastly, because this is the case, it allows archives to link the same films on a much easier way to the same films in other archives. And the way we do that is for instance, we might have a URI indicating this is Die Hard. They have another URI indicating this is their copy of Die Hard. We can easily create a sort of like connection between the two by saying is the same as. And it's a very technical thing, but just trust me, we can do this. And what's even better, we can connect this to sites that already exist, like Wikipedia, GeoNames, and even non-film collections, because they also are based on this. This is the basis for the semantic web, which we're trying to create here. Help try to further along. Even better than that is all the information on a page. So if you go to a specific URI and you will come to a web page, all the information on that web page can be searched through a specific search engine. So I'll give you some examples. I looked for a Ukrainian actress. I don't know if she's good or not, but bear with me. I just wanted to personalize it a little bit.
She's good.
Okay, she's good. Thank God. So this is her page on Wikidata. This was created by, people that actually create things like Wikimedia. They also create and bases these types of linked data sources, linked open data sources, which are openly accessible to everybody. And as you can see here, you can't see that here, so how does this work? So I press as you can see here, it indicates her name in different languages, if it's written in another language in a different way. And it also gives alternative names, which might be nicknames or something in Ukrainian. Now, this might not be correct, because I'll come to this in a minute, but this information is all there. So we also have a picture of her. This is just a part of the page, and I'm not going to surf to this website because I'm going to spare me that thing, but if you get the presentation, just click on it. You'll see an entire page which also lists where she was born, when she was born. I don't know if she's dead already.
No, she's
no. Okay, it's still not where she died, but which films she played in, and all this information is on this web page already. So by just linking this URI for this actress, you've linked all that information to this film, and you don't need to do that individually anymore. That's the really big thing, because we don't have the people to do that anymore. We used to have, and this is the beauty of linked open data. Even better if we go for GeoNames, which is another site more specifically for geography. This is the for Lviv. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, but anyway. And you can also see that there are many different ways that Lviv is transcribed in other languages, which I'm hoping is correct, but I'm pretty sure of it. You will also have a link to, so Lviv itself has a page on GeoNames as well. GeoNames and Wikidata are linked together as well, so any information, if you link GeoNames to that, it's also linked to Wikidata. So in a way, by linking just one thing, you might link a whole other set of connections that you might not even realize. By connecting those, you can then easily subtract or visualize information from those pages on an interface by choosing to do that. Or you can visualize this, and this is a major thing that we needed. It can help in certain research parts. One of those things is when we did the iMedia, since we're doing the iMedia cities thing, parts that we didn't realize is that a lot of cities had Adolf Hitler Straßes. Straßen, is that the, I don't know, anyway. And they had, of course, changed names after the war. But, like for instance, a lot of streets changed names like 18, 19 times throughout their history. On GeoNames, there is a possibility to link all those ancient names and say from when to when this specific street was had that specific name, when it changed, etc. And by linking this that street or the URL of that street to, for instance, a film, you will have automatically linked the ancient names of that street as well. So by searching in Adolf Hitler Straße, you will find the current street in Lviv. That is one of the things that we needed to do, because apparently this happened quite a lot in Europe, and we never think about this, but this is something that happens. For Brussels, we have another example. This is the left, you can see the North Station like it was. It was a beautiful, beautiful building. This was in 1935, then the 50s arrived. It wasn't bombed, but the 50s arrived, and the expansionist, modernist vision in Brussels took hold, and especially the Expo in 1958. And they wanted something new, and Brussels should be the new hub of innovation or whatever. And they created this really ugly thing on the right, which is the new North Station in a completely different part of town. So if you see the North Station on the left in specific films, a lot of people, or a lot of researchers might not even realize what that building is, because it doesn't exist anymore, and it doesn't, and it's not even, the North Station is even in a different part of town right now. So that there also linked data can help, because North Station, as it has its own URL, URI will have both the vision of the old, where it was, the coordinates, and the coordinates of the new station next to it. By linking one, you'll link both of them. But even more importantly, since we're a European project, and Europe is like the Babylon of, you know, sometimes it can drive us insane, and as researchers you must be driven insane as well to have to search in databases that are in different languages. We needed multilingual solutions, and I'm not saying it's a complete solution, but it's a start to solutions for multilingual problems for researchers, linked data. Because there are translations, for instance, I took street. This is only a part, so it only goes up to, I think, Georgian. But for every language, the word for street is also attached to this page. So by attaching the page for street, you've attached all translations automatically for this word. So if I say this is a street, and I'm doing that in Dutch, my language is straat, and somebody else is looking for rue in French, you will also be able to find that content, because it has been tagged by me in linked open data for street, so it can find the translation on this page as well. This was a major breakthrough for us, for being able to provide content finding solutions, especially for research. Another example is modernisme in Catalonia, which is similar or a part of the Art Nouveau movement, which is very big in Brussels as well. Art Nouveau, modernisme was very big in Catalonia, but they don't call it Art Nouveau. So if you would look for modernisme, you would not be able to find Art Nouveau, and vice versa. By doing this, you would be able to find it, because as you can see here, no, sorry, this is the next page. As you can see here, it's listed on the page as a subclass of Art Nouveau, which means that it's linked in that way. I'm going to stop about metadata in a minute, don't worry. But there is a warning to all this, of course. What if your information on the linked open data source is wrong? Or what if it's missing, then you can't find it. Which is why what we started doing, because it's still pretty new, is we started organizing with other museums in Brussels, so-called writing days, and in collaboration with researchers, where we invite people, and quite a lot of people apparently have a lot of time. They come along and they transcribe information in these sources so that we can use them in other ways afterwards. We do this together with Wikimedia Belgium, and other countries have started following suit or are doing similar things. I would implore researchers for your own country to start doing this as well, because it will make your life in the long run a lot easier. If you're teaching to students, let them do it, that's even easier. But I mean, it's really, it's important that the information is correct as well. So this is something that I know will be useful for researchers, but it does take, will still take some time. Then next, in the foundations for the future, we needed some digital research tools because, as we said, researchers have, or the younger researchers are known with the internet, are known with digital tools, and they don't want to come to Brussels, which is legally they're required to come to the archive and only watch these films there, because that's the way it is organized, if it's not public domain, which quite a lot of films are. But we have an opinion in Brussels, specifically our director, is that research should never be limited through IPR regulations. Research should be able to be performed on films, even if those films are in copyright, and it should be as easy as possible, because this will make the actual film more valuable. It will make the objects reusable a lot more, and it's better. So we started thinking about digital research tools, which is why we came up with iMedia Cities, and we wanted a tool where we could do these things. Some of these tools are very useful, and I'll just talk about a couple of them, and more specifically the automated or automatic audiovisual analysis tools already mentioned by Jan-Philip, which is, this is the way. This is what happens when a computer views a video file. So we can subtract a lot of information that for us might not be really useful, but it is really useful in the sense that it can show a lot of technical information, and it can subtract it and automatically create that metadata. Useful for later on if you as a researcher see these old films and sometimes they go really quick, or it's unnatural the way how quickly they walk. It's because there is a problem with the way that the playback rates and the original film rate coincide, so you need to adjust to that. This can make that more automated. This is the way a computer sees a film. If we're seeing a film, this is a concept detection. So what happens is a computer just automatically analyzes films frame by frame and gives us, for right now, about 80 concepts, going from person to dog and to surfboard, but of course, yeah, we don't really have a lot of surfboards in Brussels. And they will give us percentual indications of this. The computer thinks that this is a person, the computer thinks like here that this is a horse, etc., etc. Like what you saw here, I'm going to see it play it again. This is of course a tram and not a train, but what's really good is it follows this throughout the frames. So it's frame by frame, but it also follows that specific tram, even though it's indicated normally as a train, but it does follow it over the frames, and it does indicate that it's the same object that is automatically detected. This is really important. Why? So that you don't have to manually do this anymore. Now you might wonder, is anybody actually doing this ever? You know, typing in a person here, person here, person here. No, but this can actually be really useful for researchers in a different way as well. Like for instance, first give you an example of a modern film and what that might look like.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business.
So we're not just doing that in iMedia Cities, we're doing that for all projects as well, so that we don't have to transcribe all these subtitles. And then later on we can find a tool, hopefully, that will automatically translate those subtitles that have been automatically transcribed by the machine, so that we don't have to do that anymore either. And it's not because that we're lazy, just that we don't have the money anymore to deploy people to do this. So this is what these automatic analysis tools really give us. We've also decided, like, a lot of information is contained in shots. Like a building can be seen in a specific shot and not in the entire film. Right now, metadata is always attached to the entire film, and you have to still watch the entire film to see where you can actually see it. This, through the tool that we're developing, is you can select a specific frame by frame, frame to frame, I mean, and say this is only here you can see the building, which it makes it a lot easier in research afterwards if you're doing research on this building or on other concepts. And lastly, what we are also doing is something completely new, which turned out to be not, let's just say, didn't really completely work, but it's a research project for something, which is we wanted to see if the computer could recognize specific buildings, not just detect that it is a building, but recognize about 60 buildings in Europe divided over the cities of the project. And what we get frame by frame is, this is a this is a percentual analysis of the computer for every building that it's training for all 60 of them, and it says that the most likely, for 84% here, it's the Acropolis in Athens. Now, we can of course see this if you see the film. That's not the idea. The idea is that we can run these films through in a rapid way, and this takes away a lot of the work that you as researchers or we as an archive has to do. There are problems with this, a lot of them, because we need a lot of photographic materials to train these tools. On the left you see the photographic materials that we have. On the right is what we can find in cultural heritage films. And this creates a lot of problems, so a lot of buildings are still not recognized completely, so we need to keep training these tools. Other problems are, this is Katarina Hissen in Stockholm. It has a lot of sides, a building. It's not just the front, of course. So if you film from one side, and it needs to recognize that building as well. All this leads to a lot of issues. But it can also bring interesting results for researchers. There is no need for endless data collection, even if some researchers, and to my surprise, love doing that, which is great. I mean, keep doing that. And also, somehow, researchers are a very competitive field, maybe extremely competitive, so they want to keep some information for themselves and don't want others to be easily to easily find that information. But anyway, so there are some things that might be negative for some researchers, but in general, this type of analysis will take away a lot of the maybe unnecessary work you sometimes have to do. And there is a combination of the results of the analysis tools can also bring quick and interesting insights. Like, for instance, this example on the Grand Place. On the left is the oldest image of Brussels, like I said, from the Lumière, which is just the main square. On the right is a main square again in, this must be the 50s, because the car became king in the 50s, where it was possible to park your car on the Grand Place. If you would do that right now, they would throw you in jail, and rightfully so. But you can see through a combination of automatic analysis where a car is detected in combination to specific locations, how the evolution of the traffic within a city could function, and easily combine that information into newer models and newer statistical models. Again, a warning for this, I'm giving warnings for everything. The results of these tools are massive data files, which means for every frame you will get a lot of information that is not humanly readable, or it's humanly readable if you're an idiot like me, but it's not normally just humanly readable, and you would need some sort of translation to create a way that it becomes that people can actually understand it. And even then you will have to combine them to create interesting results. For that we need researchers. We need researchers to tell us what do you want to have researched by these automatic tools. But if we, we just said, look, search for dog and cats. This might not be of interest to researchers, but let's see how we can develop these tools together, which is all that I'm saying. How can we, what sort of combinations might be of interest to you? It will tell you also nothing about the context of the film, which is something that we need researchers for. We've had a huge discussion with my team where we have this film where you can see Patrice Lumumba, which is, Belgium and the Congo, always a little bit different, difficult history, but he came to visit Brussels to have a discussion with the government, etc. And it's an incredibly racist piece of anti-propaganda. And we had this discussion, if we put this on a public website, what do? We can't just put it out there, because then, it's a historical document, you can't just put it out there, but we need some sort of contextualization, because otherwise people will go nuts, and this is the internet, after all, people will go nuts about nearly anything these days, so we needed some kind of context, and for that, of course, we need guys like you that actually know what you're talking about, not people like my team. And as I said, accuracy is not 100%, so we need you from the start to also help us and to see how we can develop all this and how we can make these things better. And that's where I'm going to finish. We need you, these digital tools need you, because they should be developed collectively. Because we want to arrive at useful research tools, we want to get better results, we want to avoid dangerous developments, like something that ethnicity scanners, which is something that the police in, of course, my hometown Antwerp asked of Fraunhofer once, if it was possible to determine the ethnicity of people filmed through traffic things, which is something that we need to avoid at all costs. And we need context to these results, obviously. So that's about it for me. Thank you.
I want to thank you to both of our speakers for these very interesting talks, for a lot of insights and hints that a lot of us could use in our work. Now we still have some 15-20 minutes for questions and comments, and if you have some, please.
Maybe I don't mean. So I'm just curious about ownership of these learning data sets and neural network, or how this is functioning, because I see there a lot of, it's fantastic, really great possibilities and everything, but just to try to explain, I'm working with one institute on NYU, and they're really concentrated, called AI Now, on ethical aspects of artificial intelligence and machine learning and this kind of stuff. And then the point is that there are a lot of different ethical questions related to this kind of practices, also related to this kind of potential gap that use of artificial intelligence will promote the dominant cultural models, will be able to, for example, the artificial intelligence that you are building will use the materials that are from European countries. That means that it will not be able to recognize the Indian car or Indian people or people of another race, and so a lot of different issues. But let's go back first to first question related to the ownership, because there is a lot of immaterial labor here, based on open wiki, whatever tagging process, so people contributing there. But is the end product open? and in which way it will be accessible to other people. So that's my
If we have further question, maybe let's collect a few.
Do you have partners in Ukraine?
Sorry?
Do you have partners in Ukraine?
No, not yet.
No.
Any other questions?
My question.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation, wonderful project. Like, you impressed me twice. First time it was like maybe half of the year ago when I visited your website for the first time, and I was like, wow, that's something that I was dreaming about here since I started working here in the Center for Urban History at the project Urban Media Archive. We also like digitizing and collecting visual materials such as videos and photographs. So, and you impressed me today again. So I have the similar questions about these tools and algorithms. Is it possible maybe if it's artificial intelligence, maybe it can learn by itself to recognize something from these materials? Also, I have a question about the software you are using to manage all the content you have. Like, was developed by yourself, or you bought the ready product? And also about like the crowdsourcing. So, as I see, you are planning to involve people for tagging. Do you have some plan how to involve people? So that's the question: how to involve people to tag and work with such archives and such databases? Thank you.
To follow up on this question quickly, about the tools you're building for researchers, the kind of a virtual research environment, there is always a trade-off to build generic tools that everyone could use versus specific needs for specific research questions for specific research. So how you deal with this trade-off?
So we have 4 questions. You could answer it both, actually, a few, because questions are more general, so it's up to you.
I'll start with the ownership. I forget it. Just to be clear, because these tools, I also love these tools, and why I really wanted to have these tools is because I'm one of those people that sees Minority Report, you know, the Tom Cruise film, and then unfortunately reality always kicks back, and apparently these tools are not as intelligent yet as we would like them to be. They need to be trained with specific data sets, so it was specific like for buildings or for concepts with like thousands and thousands of photographs of that specific concept, so that this machine can learn all these different necessities that it can then recognize the same concept again. There are open source and readily available libraries with such materials to do that training. I don't have the information with me now, but there are several. There are only 3 of them that are actually usable for this type of training, that are readily available, where you don't have to pay for them. And you need those, because otherwise you can't train these tools yet. There is a way where they're now moving on to have this tool intellectually keep training itself to become better and better. Unfortunately, that is not for every type of automatic tool yet the case. The question on the open sourceness of the actual tools, which I think was also a question, or you might have misunderstood. That's a difficult one, because I was talking to Fraunhofer. Fraunhofer Institute in Germany is an enormous inter-universal place where they do nothing else than these type of things. They are ready to share them with, you know, they're ready to make them in an open source way. They haven't done that yet. But they're not against this idea, because they know, I mean, you need to know one thing. This technology was developed not for us. We're just using it. It was developed for the police. And it was developed, of course, and they get a lot of money from governments, and since terrorism is a huge thing, they got, it's hugely funded. To, if ever, there, like for instance in Brussels, you had the terrorist attacks at the airport, and almost like 2 or 3 hours later, we already saw the first images of street cameras from the suspects. This is because of these tools. And they can automatically track these people, and a computer can see this. If a couple of people had to go through all these images, that would never be the case. So they're developing them for that. It's a dangerous thing, because they can push it too far. Like I said, they're asking, can we do, how can you detect ethnicity, which should never be able to be done. But this is something that police, you know, we need to push back on that, those things. But since they were developed anyway with money from the government, we simply asked them, can we use them for cultural heritage? And we could. So that was good.
Are you giving back the data sets to them as well? So that means
no, the data sets, just to be clear, as the results are, we're publishing them openly. So they're going to be accessible for everybody. I'm creating a GitHub right now where you can access these data sets, and the results from anything that came out of these automatic analysis tools will be openly available, because this is something that we have as an institution and as a project have as a viewpoint, the openness. I wrote down things and I can't understand them anymore. Do you want to answer the questions?
That's the crowdsourcing. Yes, there was one question that was about involving audiences, and I think there can be different approaches. There can be, for example, well, there's first of all the collaboration between the research partners and the archives that are, you know, just on board the project. In the case for Frankfurt, for example, we don't have a research partner, but like an official partner in the project. But I'm in touch with the film students from Frankfurt University, my alma mater, and I just think they would be an interesting audience, and so I contacted them, and lots of them are just willing to try out these tools because they're so new. So I think it's rather easy to find audience that you can captivate by the possibilities we have, because it's just very exciting and has not really been done in this cultural heritage context. And they're very willing to, you know, just with a playful approach, try this out. And I also think that there's really lots of amateur historians who might be interested in helping. Say, if you have images of the war destructions in Frankfurt, for example, where I'm not an expert on Frankfurt history, so I can only see piles of rubbish. But some people might have the knowledge and be just very interested into sharing their knowledge and say, well, this pile of rubbish is actually at the intersection of Hauptwache and the street that goes down to the market square, for example. So I think and that's also why I actually like the idea of and that's what I try to strive to reach for, to have the films really as open access as much as possible. So I mean, we have this research platform, but I think it's the best interest for the project to have most of the material and the film really available for the public and negotiate rights that way if there has to be negotiation of rights.
I'm picking up on that because I now realized what I wrote about the open source thing and on the architecture that we're using. So our partner in Italy who's building the architecture for this has used mainly open source materials to create this. We've also we created the metadatabase that we created for films in Brussels. Is also an open source metadatabase, linked metadatabase for film, and which is also like readily available. What I'll do is when we send this through, just list a lot of things that might be very, very interesting or useful for all of you with regards if you want to research open source materials that can help you with this, or there's a lot of this out there, because the new generation of digital developers that is now becoming 20 because they're that young are just really, their mind is like, there isn't, ownership doesn't exist anymore. So a lot of the openness is just being pushed into the market, which is a great thing. The only thing that we have had a problem with is intellectual property on the films. Well, we didn't have a problem with it, but what we had to do is actually go for every film in copyright, is go to these right holders and explain the project to them and tell them, look, we're not making anything commercial out of this, but will you allow us to actually put this, even if it's on a protected research part, you can still, I mean, anybody that knows a little bit about computers can easily steal anything from the internet. So, you know, it's not that you can't download anything officially, but this is the way it goes with the internet. And luckily a lot of them were quite in agreement, because otherwise they would just be lying on a shelf in our depots, you know, nobody would actually see this cultural history anyway.
Yeah, we are running out of schedule, but I think we could have 1-2 more questions, and then
my question is about the program you use to maintain the database at Cinematheque. So it's actually following Ole's question. Here at Center for Urban History, we are still puzzled whether to develop our own kind of semantic program which will help to maintain metadata, or use something like collective access, which is open source, almost open source, but still accessible. And my second question is about the consortium. I always puzzled with the follow-up, so kind of and sustainability. Since this project involves a lot of funding, then who will then own the results of this project? Who will be the main responsible body for what you produced already and you are going to produce? And how it will be related to such big projects like Europeana or EU Screen and other big segregators of data. Thank you.
do we have other questions? If not, just answer this one. And
I'll take the Cinematheque question. The database we created for our internal use, to be clear, it's a film database. So we also use it for photographs, but it's not like a database for books, etc. You know, just to be clear. But it's an open source database. So it's called Stralo, because for some reason, I don't know why we thought that was an actual existing Italian word, and our director would love it. Turns out it doesn't exist. But it's you can find a lot of that information on stralo.com. And we are working together with a lot of people. Again, I'll send this information if you're interested later on, with other developers that want to work on this, because the basis of this is an open source. If you want to do further developments on that, this is the rules of the game. You will have to do that, but you will also have to, you can do that not in an open way, but if it is a further development on the open structure, just also put it on the same website and same GitHub. That's the question we have for that. And with regards to your question, it's not because we have this now that you shouldn't do it, but you shouldn't make your own database anymore. Not because I don't want you to, but it's because there are so many things out there existing, and it took, you cannot imagine how much it took us about 3 years to really get a grip on what is actually there. So just, I would say you don't have to use Stralo, just use a database that exists. It's going to be a lot easier.
On the sustainability, I think it's a tricky one, especially with the large consortium such as this one. So we're looking into various things. So it's nothing has been decided yet, and IMEC is also working on scenarios and concepts that we could use after the end of the official part of the project. So it's possible that one or several of the core partners would take over the everyday operation after the end of the official project phase, or we kind of attach iMedia Cities to a larger platform like European Film Gateway and merge it in a way to keep it sustainable. But nothing has been finalized yet for this. But this is really something we are thinking about.
Yeah, and to pick up on that a little bit, is all the film archives are part of the European Association of Film Archives, which is about 60 film archives all over Europe. And one likely scenario is that the ACE, as it's called, will take over the management role and then get all the allow this as a sort of membership tool where other archives can add their information as well. Right now we have this theme cities because we needed to get the project approved by Europe, and Europe loves cities. But it doesn't have to be cities only. You know, after the project we will put maybe all our public domain films on there. It's very open in that way. It's not limited to one sort of research. Now I remember your question about specific research tools. You're completely right. There was one group of researchers we had in mind, which was social science researchers. When we were developing this, we were not going to go for I don't know if urban planning, maybe that is social science, but anyway, some not really, I'm going to say something so wrong here, hardcore science. Am I saying this wrong? You know what I mean? We were really thinking about social science researchers and historians more specifically on how to do this. That also implied, when we started researching that group, that it has many different types of research within it. And we kept it as open as possible right now, but we're looking into building further on specific tools that might help specific researchers, but we need to know what those tools should do, you know. We have a diverse group of researchers in the project, but even then, they are still very much historians, and this is what they wanted to have based on their needs. If you have other needs, let us know. We'll see what we can do. I can't promise anything.
Thank you. So